my screen and start the presentation. So thank you, Tania, for the welcome, and I'm just going to start by saying I've explored the literature for another project, and that's the basis of what I'll share with you today. This picture here is based on one I selected because of an analogy I came across in the literature that when a tree grows in the forest, there's the exchange of resources through the tree roots, there's the protection by sharing the space against the elements, and comparing that with a tree that's sitting out in the plain alone, and perhaps what that might mean for support. So starting with what is mentoring. So in essence, it's a partnership. So I'm just doing key points. So on the right is literature that you can come back and explore later after the session when we share the slides and the recording with you. And it's nurturing process. So one person is sharing skills, upskilling another person who's the mentee, so mentor to mentee. And trust is really is the core of it, and that the one person with experience in a particular area or field can support someone else. And from a learning advisor perspective, we know also that mentors may broker or advocate for their mentee. And finally, Tania will...
when you didn't work, now we came back, it's working.
Tania will expand on Tuakana-Teina in terms of it being, you know, the reciprocal relationship. But as the literature says, you could be senior in age or experience or in some other way. So Zachary and Fane have the third edition of their book out, which is a really great practical guide for people developing their mentor practice. It's got lots of really good examples. They look at the two contexts of mentoring. So the fact that when we work with somebody, there are differences. They could be differences such as that first bullet point, something fairly easy to identify. There could be power differences. So if we're a staff member working with a student or an ākonga, how do we navigate that and keep that trust and sense of safety there for the mentee? And then we all have multiple identities. So, you know, I may have a health condition or come from a particular socioeconomic background, which will influence my perspectives based on past experience or current. And so the word reflection is here. It's really highlighted because that's how we manage those differences and work with them, checking assumptions, unpacking, so that we can recognise the differences and in an open and honest way, telling truth across the differences, as Zachary and Fane would talk about. The other context we have to bear in mind is the way we connect. So whether it's face-to-face or online, it's formal or just informal, as often happens, and just the different ways, one-on-one or one to a group or other possible combinations there. If you're a manager and mentoring somebody, you have a performance evaluation part relationship, then that's something you would manage to try and separate and keep that trust and openness in the mentoring that you're doing. Peer-to-peer Complementary is the kind of modern way of looking at what they used to call reverse mentoring. So that's when, for example, you're in a marketing team, you're a senior, a new young staff member comes in, less experienced, but they can teach you how to use TikTok effectively as a marketing tool. So it's it could be junior to senior in terms of age or role. The recipe, so starting with reflection right at the beginning as the core, and then we think about, well, why am I doing this mentoring? And we're really clear in our own minds about what the purpose is. Working with adults, being able to facilitate adult learning is important, and knowing what's a good approach for the particular person and goals that they may have. And it's just finding that right balance between support, but challenge and stimulation. So reading your mentee and working to get that balance right. And at all times, the mentee and their objectives are in the front of what we are doing, and trust. We keep that trust. So for mentees, it is more engaging when they get to choose who they'll collaborate with and what they want to gain or learn. They need that closeness and trust. They also will be reflecting as they go, and they own their objectives and need to be active and involved in the relationship. So again, we'll stick with the key points, but one of the things is that mentors can make considerable personal sacrifice to support a mentee, and we'll look at it from a learning advisor perspective. Why? What do we gain? So Catriona Cameron, who's published in the CHATLAANZ Journal her piece of research about learning advisors, and part 3 is why do we stay? So the joy that learning advisors take, this came out of her research, just observing transformation, watching ākonga growing in confidence, and explicitly stating that they also took great satisfaction in observing Māori and Pasifika students succeeding, and just the interpersonal connection, the enjoyment of that, exposure to new ideas, and just the joy that you get from helping others. In the research that I did, and I've shared some parts of that with CHATLAANZ members previously, but a couple of relevant things is, so we coach, and we may go into the mentoring phase where it's an ongoing relationship with ākonga, but this particular interviewee, Māori ākonga, wanted would gravitate towards a Māori advisor because they would understand the students' worldview. And international students made comments like that too. They would like learning advisors, so maybe from a migrant background, who could relate to them. And because of those kinds of mentoring across difference, which we had a look at before, that's where the reflection comes in. So again, we go through the experience, we reflect really critically on those engagements, and then we continue to inform our development as learning advisors or professionals, and build all of those skills that make us really good as learning advisors or in another role. The research also showed that great preference for individuals, so one-on-one and face-to-face engagement as the top preference. However, we also know that face-to-face like engagement, so simulating engagement, is very possible online and a practical solution. So there's a lot more virtual mentoring that's happening, and it can work really well by simulating the same elements that you would get from face-to-face engagement. So one of the ones is virtual eye contact, which means looking into the camera occasionally, and so that person sees your eyes, and hiding your own image, which allows you to focus really fully on your mentee. And this is an interesting one, but you can share your authentic background, and then that's a point of conversational storytelling that can spring from that. Or if you can't do that, you can have a bit of fun with it, with what's the background that you've chosen. And also if there are interruptions such as the dog barking or child coming and sitting on your knee, you've got that genuine engagement, openness and vulnerability that makes the mentoring relationship work. But finally, if you can, it's always good to plan for occasional in-person connection. This is the literature which you're welcome to go back to and explore. And I'm just going to hand back, stop sharing, and Tania's going to take us from here.
Hopefully I'll get my PowerPoint up so that everybody can see. Can you see, everyone?
It's there, yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. So Ruth really kind of set the platform, and many of the things that are talked about around mentoring are very obvious in Tuakana-Teina. But I thought we might just revisit some of the ways that it's actually utilised and where it comes from. So in times past, Tuakana-Teina was based on whakapapa, on mana. It was usually the older male to male or older female to female, handed down knowledge. As a tuakana, there were obligations that were required from the tuakana in terms of the whānau setting and the iwi setting. Tuakana-Teina obviously is a culturally contextualised practice, but has usefulness across all cultures, and it's also holistically inclusive. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Today, as we experience Tuakana-Teina in the tertiary setting, our institute has got a Tuakana program up and running for students. And actually, this year we are piloting a Tuakana-Teina for staff, based on what we already know and have established in the Tuakana student program. But in this space, obviously, it's peer-to-peer. It can be a combination of older to younger or younger to older now, able-bodied to less able-bodied, less able-bodied to able-bodied, and I've experienced that, my team has experienced that with the wonderful things that we have learnt from our disabilities leaders, Tuakana. Fantastic learnings coming from them. This might be similar to mentoring, but since I've ever known Tuakana-Teina, it has always been flexible in terms of its space, place, and time. And I think that's still one of the highlights of Tuakana-Teina, which is sometimes we just need to flex around each other's spaces and places and times of meeting. Again, when we talk about that holistic approach, it means that we're catering to not only the learning spaces that we're engaging in, but also the mental, physical, spiritual dynamics of the whole person. So that Mason-Juri whare tapawha is a normalized way of looking at individuals. It's not just thinking of them in terms of you're here to learn from me and I can probably learn from you. It's more than that. It's a relationship. And in today's modern setting, that mana that we're talking about today actually is hugely shaped by the individual and how they see their mana. And the reason why I highlight that is because in times past, we had whānau around whānau, and we had communities who understood who they were, where they come from, and their language and their culture. Today, we are dealing with a variety of ākonga or staff who may not know their fuller details of who they are, where they come from, their culture or their language, and that's huge. So the mana enhancing is about building that mana of that person from where they're at. And I think that's quite an important thing to think about. I think this has now become kind of normalized approach for many of our ways of engaging with students. So I'm sure you already recognize this, but there are times when you might go through that didactic approach where you've got the tutor, learner listening and being passive in their engagement. But predominantly Tuakana-Teina is about that reciprocity, that exchange of ideas. Not only am I, as Tuakana, sharing what I know, but the Teina also has knowledge, and we need to recognise that, and that can be part of the learning journey as well. So the reciprocity of engagement. The pedagogical underpinnings is predominantly ako, but those tenets are, again, as I indicated before, because it's a cultural approach, we might be using cultural Māori words to describe this, but actually I've no doubt that if you were to think of another, you will recognise these as, oh, I recognise this as this. So for example, mana, rangatiratanga, which is another word for self-autonomy. Whānau hapu iwi, my community. Tapu Māori, my ability to, my sacredness and myself. All of those kind of things. So those are part of the underpinnings of the approach that we have with Teina. These are just some of the responsibilities that I thought were really relevant for us to know about in terms of the tuakana responsibilities. Our job is to foster that relationship. I really liked what Ruth said before, which is it's about trust. It's about an exchange of power. It's the power doesn't just belong to me, it belongs to our Teina as well. Mana enhancing, we keep on coming back to that mana. Communication is necessary. Being able to exchange through that trust relationship, what are our boundaries? What can we do for one another? What can we exchange with one another? Being competent in our experiences and actually building the Teina pūrākau, building that story for the Teina, but our pūrākau also grows and develops as well. And being knowledge sharers and growers. I love that concept. We do have knowledge and we do share that, but we also are growing something quite beautiful. So I do like that. So mentoring is actually one of the ways in which Tuakana-Teina can be used within Tuakana-Teina, as well as role modelling, as well as peer support, as well as role reversal. And after this session, I'm actually going off to do an observation of one of the staff members, and I'll be the Teina in her classroom as I observe her. Ways of doing that through wānanga, and where that wānanga might happen is up to you as Tuakana-Teina. Workshops, obviously. I love this other idea, which is whakarongo ti tiro kōrero. That's a normal process when we talk about te reo. It's one of the ways that we engage students with te reo. But actually, it's a great process for when you start a relationship. First you listen, then you look, and then you speak. The speaking comes later. And pūrākau, again, those things are very, very important. Similar to Ruth, our programs have gone through a bit of a transition. So COVID kind of made us reflect a little bit on what was important. So pre-COVID, it was all face-to-face. But during COVID, everything was online. And then post-COVID, we actually got an opportunity to reflect on what that might look like. And we got an opportunity to mix that up a little bit. So we did get feedback from our tuakana during our training session. And I love that they talk about the importance of being together. I love that idea for our ākonga. And I see that can occur with our staff. And I think, why do we shy away from that? Well, in actual fact, I've established one of those in my department. Now I'm tuakana to our staff, and we share that process as well. Sharing and broadening our tuakana networks, that's what the feedback said. They loved listening to other tuakana and their experiences. And our teina during COVID, well, they were just amazing, resilient in that space. And what we found was, when we asked the teina afterwards, well, how would you like? They didn't mind. They said, we could actually do a combination. I'm happy for that. And actually, that's reflected in the way that we work with teina today. A combination approach. What are the benefits to this? There's many. It's no longer just set for what's the right word, for a passive way of learning and teaching. It's intergenerational. There's a reciprocity that goes there. It can be formal or informal. It's always about the mana of the person, building their esteem. It can be culturally responsive. I love the fact that students that I work with, and I work with and staff who might come from a different culture, get to share their cultural ways of doing and being. That's exciting for me. In that space, it's acceptable to have past, present, future experiences to talk about. When I say that, that's as a result of us always talking. For example, as Māori, we talk about our tupuna, and we talk about those pūrākau from our times past. They're very much part of our present journey as we look forward. Flexible, being able to belong and to benefit, and then to bestow on somebody else. But more predominantly, it's not only about the individual, it's about who they come with. And that's my reference list. We'll make sure to make these available for you later on. But thanks for listening to that. I hope it wasn't overly rushed. We've just got a sense of time around this. And we wanted to be able to go along and have some key discussions. And I think we've got small enough numbers that we can probably do this. Rather than form this into a question, we actually just wanted to put that there and see what you wanted to, how you would like to engage around these points of discussion. So the current Tuakana-Teina mentoring context of your practice, of your space, of your context, and also what to look for in a Tuakana-Teina or a mentor. Are there things that you think we might not have highlighted as, and what are you looking for in a Tuakana-Teina, Tuakana or a mentor? Important aspects of that relationship. What can CHATLAANZ do in that space, and what might be something that you will take away from this? So I'm just going to open the floor for that open discussion. Please choose one of these points of conversation. You can either do that or just make a comment that comes to mind related to this. So let's open up the floor. Has anyone got a point of that they would like to discuss? Before I pick you.
Well, I might say something, Tania. I think it's Ruth. I think it's great that you've chosen this topic for this CHATLAANZ session, because I know, like, we are running a Tuakana-Teina program here, but it's sort of like we're sort of doing it in isolation in a way. And I think one thing, thinking about CHATLAANZ support, is like sharing information amongst each other about what different approaches people are taking and how they're running their programs, and you know, some of the things that they found easy to do, some of the challenges they've had, because, you know, I think we could probably help one another in terms of just making a little bit easier by sharing some of those you know, sort of pitfalls and, you know, amazing things that are happening. I think for our program, we're onto the 3rd semester, and it's grown. In this semester, it's grown. We've got like 30 tuakana and I don't know, Pohārama could tell you an accurate number of Teina. So it's growing and growing, and we're learning from mistakes. But, you know, it's really, I think, really good to sort of share what each other's doing. So it's opening this up is really good. Yeah.
I love that.
Kia ora koutou. Sorry,
kia
I'm sure you can hear me, but you won't be able to see me. I've got my laptop lid shut. Apologies. Yeah, kia ora. So Pohārama here. I also based at Ara, Te Pukenga, of course. And thank you for sharing those presentations. I've quietly been jotting down some notes in the background, but I am currently facilitating or helping to facilitate the Tuakana-Teina program here.
Facilitating.
Yeah.
You're the man.
Yes. I think one of the main points that I've taken away from this, particularly around like the cultural relevance, which for me is probably an area that we could help our Tuakana and Teina to understand better. Part of the limitation, of course, is time, and so
Can I ask how many training sessions you have with your tuakana?
Yeah, sure. So we do have one initial training session, which we generally try to organise as a noho. So that's quite that's good in that sense, but just trying to share the depth or the cultural significance around.
That was a key point of our training, which was if we were going to have tuakana, and some of our tuakana, just so that you're aware, some of our tuakana were not Māori.
That's right.
And what we wanted to do was, we didn't want to put them out there randomly. We needed to equip them with good knowledge and foundation in terms of cultural responsiveness before we let them loose into the space with their teina. And that was really critical. We just did 3 training sessions. The first one was to put the foundations in. The second one was to bring the tuakana back so that they could then reflect so much, have conversations meaningful conversations with their other tuakana about what's happening in their space, each of them, because they all have similar stories. And then the third one was about reflecting on their practice. And we found that really, really useful. Thanks for that, Poharama. Has anyone else got anything they would like to share or to comment on?
I had a question. I was just starting to put it in the chat, but I'll put it out there. I wondered, are your tuakana supporting students studying in the same area or not? Is that important? I wasn't clear if they were peer tutors or there was a separate peer tutoring system as well. Yeah, interested in that.
And for our institute, it's gone through a little bit of an adjustment. We've now got two types of tuakana. We've got tuakana ako, and their focus is like the peer tutor, which is on the academic side of things, and tuakana tauwhi, which is actually more on the pastoral care side of things. And that's as a result of the research that we had done prior to establishing Tuakana-Teina, which sought students present, students past, and students future, their opinion and their understanding of what they wanted. The findings found that they wanted to be, predominantly, they wanted to have peers talking to them, acting in a way that was like a peer tutor or a tuakana. They really wanted that. So we established that to make sure that it could meet their needs. Oharama, how are you guys doing yours?
Oh, aroha mai koutou. I've actually just got some tuakana present with me at the moment.
Cool.
So currently, yeah, so it is a lot of it is focused on peer tutoring as opposed to just mentoring. I mean, there is of course that aspect, but peer tutoring, in which case we are pairing them up with someone who's on a higher level. I mean, ideally, if we've got tuakana coming from a diploma or a bachelor's level, for example, they'll be paired with a teina from a certificate level, foundational level program. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Could I, Tania and Poharama, so thank you. Can I please ask how you do the match? So Tania, how you do the match, and Poharama, it's across the program, the similar program, is that right? So
Yes.
That's correct. So
program area.
Yeah, the tuakana would be from within that. They would work with students who are doing the same course. So for example, if it was nursing, it would be year 2 to year. We tried to make it year 3 to year 1, but we found that the timetable wasn't working very well. So we came back to year 2, even though year 2 is the busiest for our nurses at least. Soon, those of us who are in Te Pukenga will have the same kind of program, so it shouldn't be too difficult.
How do students choose each other?
So no, we don't. We kind of have them in pairs or from within. They will work together. The tuakana will work together. We encourage them to work with groups as opposed to individuals, although they can work with individuals. The tuakana is chosen also by the grade that they hold and also by knowledge from students to recommend, or in particular their tutors will go along and say this particular student shows leadership skills and understanding and can fulfill this space. And then of course the tuakana has to accept that role.
Yep, it's very much similar here. We've got our Tuakana and Teina have been identified by the department's managers, tutors, in which case we then make contact with them individually and just discuss, whether they'll be interested in being part of the program, and if so, we match them with one other thing, sorry, to point out is that we do make sure that the tuakana have a consistency with their grades, so that they've got the they've got the right skills there. So yeah, it does take a wee bit of mixing and matching to find the suitable match.
Thank you, Dawn. Dawn has asked a question. How do you sustain the relationship over time, especially when workload and work placements impact on availability to commit to the relationship? That's a particularly important question because we found for us that the time of our tuakana was actually limited. So our tuakana would go from semester to semester because each semester they would have to look at their own commitments. Sometimes they were out on placement, sometimes they had bigger workloads in the following semester. And so that we had agreement with the tuakana that we would look at their workload semester to semester, even though they were contracted for the year. And that was quite important because we didn't want to burden. The point is not to burden your tuakana because their priority is to pass and to do their course, but to create avenues by which they might be able to move. So it might mean that they come back to the team and say, I'm having difficulty here, and we explore that on their behalf. We create spaces and places and times so that they don't have to worry about that. Are they paid? Ruth has asked that question. That payment, yes, they started off in a paid position. Due to financial difficulties through Te Whūkinga, we have had to remove that and they are now volunteers. Our hope is that once we come back into some place that we can bring that payment back because we believe they should be paid.
You still give them some sort of signed contract though to say, I will do this. Yeah.
We do. So although they may not be paid in terms of monetary gain, we do still support them in other ways. And I'm afraid I'm out of the loop with our Tuakana-Teina program for students. I'm now involved in the Tuakana-Teina program for staff. So I'm not sure what those oha elements are.
Hello, I'm Cindy. I'm from the Unitech, and I'm one of the supervisors for the the peer mentoring program. And our leaders actually are paid on slightly above minimum wage. So, and also they have a contract that they have to sign before they start their role. And it has been very successful. We have been on that initiative for peer mentoring for quite a number of years now. And since we are under Te Whūkinga, we still managed to get some funding for that through our student success achievement team. And so what happens was, like, we get all the head of school, or not really head of school, like we call them the APM, which is the academic program managers, to recruit the leaders who are mainly very successful, and also they have achieved high grades to mentor the first year students, especially in difficult courses. So in our program, we do run quite a number of different types of mentoring programs in terms of the types of like needs from the students. So for example, we also have this kind of program in when the students are learning in the labs, tutorial labs, or they may be doing the, surveying outdoor. So there will be a leader, supporting the students who require that kind of help. So it's basically more on the academic kind of like tutoring support for the Teina. And we find that is very effective because it's very kind of like personal on an individual basis. So, the students or the, Teina will be able to ask, specific questions, or if they got lost in the, in the area of the study, they can always ask questions, anytime. And now we also run that during the lecture time, or during the class time where the lecturer may be teaching, and we have the the senior leaders supporting the students. So while they're learning, sometimes they may be behind, so they can always ask questions, and our leader can always come side by side with them to support them in their learning. So basically, it's quite organized in a sense, and we do the training for all the leaders before they start their role. And normally we do flip training. They have to do 3 hours of like training on their own, like self-directed learning. And then we ask them to come back face-to-face training for 4 hours, whereby we ask them to do a lot of practical sessions to get them, to equip them with the skills that they are, that they can help, the students they are, they have issues with. So we find that our sessions are, very very successful in the sense that we are able to target and also meet the needs of the various groups of students in the different programs. So yeah, so this from the Unitech.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cindy, for sharing that. That's really, really amazing to hear that you've got good results. I've just seen in the chat that Rowan has put that ara te pukinga tuakana are paid a living wage for up to 5 hours per week, which is what we used to do as well. But because we had lost our funding, we're hoping to return to that at some stage. Dawn's asked the question, what might this look like if CHATLAANZ offered a Tuakana-Teina program to mentor new learning advisors into the profession? You would ask that lovely question, wouldn't you? I will come back to that beforehand, because I'm sorry, Kevin. I saw your hand there and I was going to ask you to speak. How about you do that before I answer that question?
Kia ora. Thanks, Tania. Thanks to you and Ruth for your presentations and your insights this afternoon. Well, Rowan's partly answered my questions because I'm also from Aotearoa, and we do pay our tuakana. I did want to clarify something that Poharama said about the training. It's not just, I don't think we could call it a single training. They do get training on different aspects. So obviously on the skills of being a tuakana and what the expectations are around tutoring the learners, but there is also a cultural element as well, which sort of takes part in a wānanga. We had issues with staffing resource around the last lot of training, so not all of it took place. And also we do then have a follow-up tuakana hui, where they get an opportunity to reflect on their learnings and how things are going, and connect with the other tuakana as well. And I think that aspect of tuakana connecting with each other is really, really important and learning from each other. I had a couple of questions. Just a question for you, Tania, around your program. Do you offer it to across the whole institution and all programs, or is it limited to a certain number of programs or certain levels?
At its inception, we limited it to a certain group of schools, but then we did open it up. And the only limitation that we experienced was whether or not the schools had the required tuakana skills and whether or not they wanted to participate. We did find some schools did not want to participate. They had their own sort of systems that they were already running in these spaces, which was fine.
And did you have any? What were the challenges in scaling up like that? Because we are currently limited to around 13 programs, where we know that there are reasonable numbers of Teina and Tuakana to support them, and also because we have limited staff resource ourselves. So how did you manage that?
Yes, not very well. We made an argument. We put a business proposal together to make an argument for specific people to be employed to ensure that it would run and function away from us, because what had happened was when we first started to pilot this, we had teachers from usually from the support centres. We weren't hired to do this, but we participated in it because we found it to be valuable and we wanted to make sure it got good traction. But we were not, that wasn't our job. So we went along and we argued, this is going to be successful. You need to make sure that we have staff to meet and here are our statistics to show how successful Tuakana are going with their students. So they did. They hired two people to specifically be coordinators for the Tuakana-Teina and an admin person, and then they had to do all the training and so forth. To ask about the difficulties, it was hugely difficult because it was about trying to align timetables.
Yeah.
With the Teina. And sometimes that worked, predominantly it worked, sometimes it didn't. And we had to be flexible around that idea of flexibility of space, place and time. One of our schools, they found that their students were more proactive online than they were face-to-face. So they went with it. And that makes sense. And they carried out their Tuakana-Teina workshops in the evening. So it makes sense. I just want to come back to this this question of Dawn's. What might this look like if CHATLAANZ offered a Tuakana-Teina program as we close? This will be our closing question, to mentor new learning advisors and into the profession. I love this question. I think that we have enough skill within us, and what I probably would do is I would look to go along and create an idea of what a tuakana must have, or a mentor must have, a profile, and then perhaps invite some of our members to put their hand up, and maybe it might be we just do that as a group, we just do that as on a casual basis. There's lots of opportunities to do that. I'm interested in creating that space for our members, our new members, but also our existing members. At the moment, I'm working as a tuakana within my department, but also across the schools, with tutors. And one of the ways that we engage is to talk about how we might progress their journey. If they want to go for a movement in pay, or if they want to go to the next level from SESM to PASM, we're looking at different ways. It's a new concept, and we're looking at ways that we can engage. So I do that face to face and online with our staff. I hope that gives a kind of an idea of what might be potential opportunities. Everybody, I think we've run out of time. Ruth has just mentioned, just as a closer, I didn't mention, but in the research ākonga, we're doing a lot of informal peer mentoring, mainly online. Yes, it happens all the time. Some stuff you never capture in the data. I want to say thank you to everybody. I'm just going to close our time in karakia. If you have got any further queries for both Ruth and I, feel free to email us. I'm sure we'd love to respond to those queries. So I'm going to close our time. Menoi tātou. Kia tau kia tātou katoa te ata whai o tō tātou ariki ai hukraiti. Me te aroha o te atua me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te warua tapu. Moa ke tonu atu. Amene. Paimarire, everybody. Wonderful to see you all. Bye for now. Thank you, Cindy. Ruth. It worked out good. Congratulations. Oh, you're on mute. I don't know why.
Oh, I know.
Oh, there you are.
Because, you know, it echoes and all that stuff. So I thought I'd better. I think, yeah, preparing well is the secret, isn't it?
It really is.
Making sure you don't, you know, people arrive and you've got something to offer them. Yeah. So we also
I've got an observation to go to.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Catherine would like the recording, but she also needs our slides. So I'll send mine straight to her.
Yep.
Because they go up on the website with the recording.
I'll do mine as well.
Yeah.
And then
okay.
I'll come back later. I'm sorry, I do have to go. I'm supposed to be observing now. But congratulations,
No
Ruth. That was excellent. You were fantastic. That information is going to be critical.
Yes, well, you could see all the synergies, couldn't you? But which hopefully were there for participants. I made lots of notes too. So thank you, Tania. Okay. Thank you so much. Enjoy
Have a great weekend.
Enjoy being a Teina.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.